Welcome everyone to the January chapter meeting of the San Fernando Valley chapter of the Climate Reality Project. If this is your first time joining us, we are glad to have you here. It's wonderful to see so many faces, familiar and unfamiliar, on this call, all eager to learn from our esteemed guest speakers from Bright Saver tonight. So to begin the evening, I would like to hand things over to do a land acknowledgement to our legislative coordinator, Kathy Schaefer, a longtime member of the chapter. Kathy, would you go ahead and unmute? And Diana, will you share the land acknowledgement so that everyone can follow along?
A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes and respects Indigenous peoples as stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. It acknowledges the history that has brought us to reside on this land, the colonialism that is present in our current systems, and calls on us to be mindful of our own present participation in it. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Tongva, Quiche, Tatavian, and Chumash tribes.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I am going to turn things over to Diana and Zena to introduce our guest speakers tonight because they were the ones who first got interested in this and made contact with Bright Saver. Diana, would you like to go ahead and introduce one of our speakers?
Cora, it's nice to have you this evening. Cora is a serial founder and leader of social mission-driven organizations. She previously worked at Climate Action California and founded Climate Justice Incubator. In January 2025, she co-founded Bright Saver to start a balcony plug-in solar movement in the US, similar to what has taken over in Germany. Zena?
Yes. Raj is passionate about using technology to scale mission-driven organizations and loves working with organizations tackling the biggest problems facing today's society. He joined Bright Saver in May of 2025 after past leadership roles at various social ventures and non-for-profits. And he can tell you more that he wants to share as well.
Thank you both for introducing. We will have a chance to ask questions at the end, so please just save your questions to the end, and then we'll be able to enter questions in the chat and have our speakers get through as many as possible. All right, Cora, take it away.
All right, it's great to be here. And hi, Kathy. It's been a while. We used to work together at Climate Action California, and I've actually heard a lot about this chapter through her. Hey, Kathy. And I'm delighted to be here to put faces to the reputation of great work that you all do. So I'm Cora. As you heard, I'm co-founder of Bright Saver. I'm really happy to be here. We're the first and only nonprofit single-mindedly focused on making plug-in solar available to every American who wants it. And I think we're going to talk today about the movement. Let me just give you a little preview. We started January 5th of last year, so we're almost exactly a year old. And this year, 2026, we know that 25 or more states are going to introduce legislation paving the way for plug-in solar in their states. So that actually exceeds even our high expectations for ourselves. And obviously, we didn't do it alone. We did it in coalition with groups like yours, who have thrown their weight, their time, their reputation behind this issue, because it really is. I agree with what you said at the top. I mean, these are dark times for climate in a lot of ways, but we see this as one bright spot, pun intended, where we can come together across the political spectrum around a clean energy solution that just makes sense economically as well as from the goodness of our hearts. So with that, Raj, are you gonna share the visuals?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Raj. So I think big picture, I'm going to give an overview of the impact work. That's the side I lead, and Raj is going to dive into the product side. And that is something that is a little unusual about us. Actually, Raj and I used to work at a different social enterprise, although we didn't know each other there. We do have earned revenue through the product branch of our organization that Raj is in leadership of. So we sell these things, and we are also working on mission-driven, impact-focused work, such as legislative change. So I lead the impact side, and that's what I'm going to talk about, and then I'll turn over to Raj. So we're Bright Saver. Could you go to the next one? And in case you don't know, this is what plug-in solar is. These are small PV modules that can be mounted just about anywhere. One of the most common places is in a backyard. We'll get to that option in just a second. But as was mentioned, these are huge in Europe. They don't really exist here. And the really distinct thing about them is they're small and they plug directly into a standard outlet. So that is what we're fighting for. We think that is the key to making clean energy accessible to absolutely everyone. Could you go to the next slide? So they're really versatile and modular. You can add as time goes on. So the one on the left is similar to what you see in Europe. These are zip tied to a deck or a balcony. They're pretty lightweight. And the one on the right is the backyard setup. These are the ones that we install primarily right now. Each of these panels is about the size of a door. And what is it, Raj? About 60 pounds each, would you say?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I actually, back in the day, I carried one of these to farmers market myself. So I can attest that they are difficult to carry by yourself. So they're a little unwieldy, and that's one of the things we do is we do install them or guide customers in installing them. So why do we, oh yeah, you can go to the next one.
Okay.
Why is this important? I mean, I think a lot of folks already are familiar with this idea that, you know, this is a way to make solar affordable. It's a way to get soft costs out of the way. These are self-installed units. And as we know, soft costs are 40 to 60% of the cost of rooftop solar, more in some places in our beloved California, where we are as well. So these are much more affordable systems. They're smaller, they're cheaper per watt when we get the soft costs out of the way and we allow self-installation, because the cost is really reduced to the component level cost, the cost of the technology itself, which every year plummets. So these also provide resilience when they're paired with batteries. As we know, there are many communities for whom resilience is a matter of life and death. They need to keep their medication refrigerated, or they need air conditioning in our increasingly hot summers. And then, of course, climate. We can talk a little bit about the messaging, but you know, we're all climate people. We're all in this to save the world. Could you go to the next one?
Yes. Sorry, I think
No, it's okay.
lost my screen. Oh, sorry, something happened. In theory, I can. Sorry.
You may have to click in the actual app in order to control.
I just hold on one second. I'm trying to. We actually stop sharing, and then I'll. Let's go back. There and.
I'll just say while we're figuring this out that we did not expect to get into policy work when we started this thing a year ago. We thought we would be essentially the product side and with a social mission. We thought, hey, if we get these into people's hands, if we make them affordable, if we keep ourselves a nonprofit and keep our soft costs low, then these are going to take off the way they have in Germany. We only got into policy work because we learned pretty quickly that that was a major barrier. And that is essentially the legislative change that is moving in 25 states at least this year. It is essentially changing the regulations from this one-size-fits-all rooftop solar model where you need interconnection, you need permitting, you need an inspection, you need to submit technical diagrams, getting rid of all of that and exempting these tiny systems from that lengthy and expensive process. So that's what we're doing in a nutshell on a policy level. And it's been, I think, part of the reason this thing has like spread really quickly, it's almost viral, is because it's this one thing we can do for climate in this very challenging political environment on the federal level. And two, this was first passed by a Republican legislator in Deep Red, Utah. It passed unanimously. This is really something that appeals to many of us, many of our values. It's energy independence, it's climate, it's resilience, it's don't tell me what to do in my backyard. It's really there. It appeals on so many levels, and there's no fiscal implications to the legislation whatsoever. So it's sort of a low-hanging fruit, we think, for legislators. 70% of Americans can't get rooftop solar for a variety of reasons. They're renters. Maybe they own an apartment, but they're on the bottom 3 floors. They have no access to their roof. They can't afford rooftop solar. I mean, there are a lot of reasons. And I just want to say, like, we love rooftop solar. We love utility scale solar. We are not here to compete with them at all. Although I think we're being perceived a little differently in places, but we really want to be clear about that. Like, these are small systems. We see this as the gateway drug or tip of the spear into larger solar and clean energy adoption. And we think that's really important. It's not just symbolic. You get one of these, you look at your electricity bill, you see it went down, you think to yourself, wow, I ran my refrigerator off the sun. How cool. You get a little bit of solar, you want more. So that's kind of our big theory of change here. If you could go to the next one. So we ran a pilot here in California. We're actually still running a pilot, but these are some of our first pilot participants, and they all wanted rooftop solar. So we've got Tiffany on the left. She is a new mom, definitely a homeowner, actually wanted rooftop solar, but her budget is stretched right now. She couldn't do it. And she really saw this as a way to take climate action, make her energy more affordable, but not break the bank. Similarly, Terry there in the middle, he's a retiree on a fixed income. His roof needed to be replaced to get rooftop solar, and that just about doubled the cost for him. And he knew, well, I guess miracles are always possible, but he says to me, like, do you think I'll live long enough for rooftop solar to pay off with a new roof? So this was really appealing to him because it didn't require the replacement of his roof. And we've got Sean on the right in Concord. They have really hot summers there. I know you do too. So he is a renter. He really wanted his landlord to get rooftop solar. His landlord said no, but this was something he could do to offset his really high bills in the summertime. Okay, go to the next one. Yeah. So, okay. So what does it look like? This is how it should look. This is what it looks like in Europe and now Utah. So it's very simple. You've got your PV modules on the left. You've got the DC current going through an inverter being converted to AC that your house can use. Sometimes there's a battery here. Sometimes there's a battery on the other end. But the basic setup is pretty simple. The electricity goes straight into your house wiring, and anything that's consuming electricity at that time consumes that electricity. Whether it's your refrigerator, whether it's your lights, whatever it is. Now, without a battery, of course, this only happens when the sun is shining. So a battery does not just improve resilience, but it certainly improves utilization rate and efficiency. But not everyone can afford that. It certainly increases the cost. The key here, and what Utah did that is essential that we're trying to replicate, is that if you ever are producing more electricity from your panels than you're consuming, the excess electricity flows back to the grid. That's why on the right side you see this arrow, this bidirectional arrow. And the reason that's important is because in every state other than Utah, the utilities have jurisdiction, meaning that if there's any connection to their grid whatsoever, they require that interconnection agreement and that whole permitting process that compared to the cost of these tiny systems can be quite significant and certainly slows down adoption. So that's what we're trying to change. That's what Utah changed. And if you go to the next slide, this is how companies are getting around these restrictions, these regulatory restrictions right now. You'll see this is what it looks like in the other 49 states other than Utah. It's the same on the left, but when we get to the right, what happens to that excess electricity that you're not consuming behind the meter? Well, in the other 50 states, you can install a piece of hardware there at the breaker box at the last step that it prevents that excess electricity from flowing back to the grid. We did this in our California pilot, our first iteration, and you have to get an electrician in there to hardwire it to the breaker box. It's permanent, so it's very difficult for renters to do this. And the extra hardware plus the cost of the electrician just about doubles the cost. So we see this as a step in the right direction, this system, but it is not going to lead to the exponential growth that we see in Germany. Okay, go to the next one. So I kind of answered this. Why don't we have this? Let's go to the next one. Yeah, okay, so this this is our hero, Raymond Ward. He took it upon himself about a year and a half ago to change the regulations in his state of Utah. And we were brought in quite early in that process. We helped him craft the bill. And it was very, very simple. The meat of it was about half a page. And really, it did what we're talking about. It exempted these small systems from interconnection requirements. By consequence, it makes net metering inaccessible to these small systems, but that's still a good trade-off, we think, for the consumer, because you don't have to go through the lengthy interconnection process. You don't have to pay those fees. And these small systems are going to be backfeeding such negligible amounts of electricity, you would not get very much compensation through a net metering program anyway. A couple things that ended up in the bill. The utilities asked for release of liability. They got it. It ended up in the bill. UL certification or equivalent nationally recognized certification is required, but it's very, very simple. In essence, it just says these are a different technology than rooftop, and we need different rules. So you could go to the next one. Oh, is this you, Raj? Okay, great. So do we have the slide about all the states that are doing this, Raj? Anyway, I'll just say 15 states as of today have announced that they are going to introduce or have already introduced legislation, really modeled on the Utah bill. There are different flavors floating out there. Some set the wattage limit higher. Utah limits it to 1,200 watts. Some states are doing a higher threshold. Some states are putting exemptions in there. Yeah, okay, here we go. There we go. So this are, ever more states. Every time I give this talk, I have to update this slide because we have more and more states, and I'm thrilled to say that California is among them. We've actually been working on this for months, but we've been keeping ourselves tight-lipped while we do sort of some maneuvering behind the scenes to build coalitions. So California, Scott Wiener is introducing this bill. He's going to make it a priority. We're super excited about that. But we've got some other big ones, New York, Pennsylvania, a bunch of blue states, a few red states. I talked actually this morning, very early in the morning, with a deep red state that just learned about this and is already drafting a bill. So, really, this has taken off. This has become a viral moment. And we can be more excited to be a part of it. So we're going to have at least 25 states introduce, half the country, and we expect another handful to join them. Can we go to the next one? Okay, and this is from our white paper, which you can find on our website. So this is just documenting. This is public information. This is the number of registered balcony solar units in Germany that we've seen in the last few years, and you'll see about 1 million registered. They do have a registration requirement. Lots of folks ignore that, so we think the actual number is closer to 4 to 5 million. folks in Germany who have balcony solar panels. And we expect to see something similar in this country. I mean, people want this. The technology, the physics behind the technology is the same. We just have to adapt it to a different electrical system. You could go to the next. Yeah. So, as adoption surged in Germany, the cost really plummeted. You'll see some strange variabilities here as a result of global supply chain issues. But generally, you see the dramatic downward trend. And you'll see that the cost of these systems will track much more closely to the component level costs of PV modules and inverters themselves, because those soft costs are out of the picture. If you could go to the next one. And these are some projections that we have once we hit that critical threshold of 5 states or more passing enabling legislation like we saw in Utah. We expect that the cost will plummet just as rapidly as it did in Germany as the adoption surges as rapidly as it has in Germany. So I think I'll end on the next slide, Raj. So you'll see here that a series of legislative actions are what it's going to take to lead to these low cost projections and these adoption projections. And the first one is the one that we expect to see 25 states introduce in 2026 that we've discussed. There will probably be more down the line. Germany saw its real surge when there were renters protections. But we think they had the right playbook. They did the interconnection exemption first, the defining these small systems as a new class first. Adoption ticked up, and then they said, hey, what really we need to do is protect renters. Then they passed those renters protections, and it went from the tens of thousands to the millions in a matter of 2 years. So we are going to follow the same playbook, and we are well on our way for part 1. And that's all I have to say.
Awesome. Thanks, Cora. Yeah, so it's hard to follow up Cora with all the progress that Cora's made on her side of things, but we do. But on the product side of things, what we've been let me see if I can, there you go. So we've been working really hard on trying to figure out the best combination of product offerings that meet the needs of customers in various parts of the country. And then more recently, we've been focused on the US. So we started, if you remember in the diagram before, Cora had shown that little balcony smaller panel. It's like a 200-watt size panel. And we tried a pilot program of shipping those to various parts of the country. And it was a good start for us to figure out cost-wise and whether or not that was feasible for us to scale. And at that time, we decided it wasn't. So we pivoted instead and focused much more on the California market. So most recently, and if you go to the Bright Saver website, you'll see 2 sets of offerings, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that here today. So right now, there are 2 core offerings, and you'll see them listed on our on the website as backyard and NEM expansion. So the backyard, the real difference between the backyard solar and the NEM expansion product offerings is the battery. So if you look there on the diagram, you'll see there's kind of a smart hub at the top connecting to the inverter here, and the black on the right. And at the bottom there, you can see 2 batteries stacked on top of each other. And those are designed primarily for customers who don't have rooftop solar, but it's not exclusive to those. So if you have rooftop solar, you could get ones with a battery, but I'll go into a little bit of that differentiation as to why it's best for them. And then there's NEM expansion. So if you have existing rooftop solar, you are able to add to that. Again, I'll touch on that a little bit more. So for folks who have that existing solar and just want to add a little bit more to their product, to add a little more to their existing array, this is the best product for them. So let's start with talking about the backyard solar. So backyard solar generates electricity from the solar panels, and then can do one of 2 things. They can immediately start powering devices in the home, and or it can store the excess in a battery for later use. The benefit of the system, one of the benefits of the system is that with the app, you can actually control it and you can set a schedule for it. So you can say charge from 10 to 2, and that's the highest priority. If the battery is fully charged, then send any excess into the house and let that for any devices that need to get used. For any devices that need electricity, then it would draw from the panels there. And then otherwise, you can set like set a schedule and say between 4 and 9 p.m. as an example, when rates are the highest, the battery would discharge, and then helping to really address the highest cost that you likely experience during the day. So that's one of the bigger benefits of having battery. So it's a smaller battery. So to be clear, this is not meant to be to compete with a Powerwall or some other larger battery systems. This is meant to be kind of a smaller system, but again, smaller, more affordable, and otherwise portable. That's the key. It effectively eliminates risk of backfeeding electricity onto the grid with two components. The system itself, the smart hub that's a part of it, can actually detect whether or not they're devices that are using the electricity. And if the battery's full, for example, and there's nothing in the house using it, it'll shut itself off. And that way, there's no risk of you backfeeding anything back onto the grid. In addition, it comes with a little smart monitor, which can actually connect to your breaker panel, and it can prevent the backfeeding onto the grid if there's any excess going back. So between those two fail-safes to prevent against backfeeding, that's what makes the system really appealing for individuals who don't have solar already, because again, it depends on who you talk to at the utilities, unfortunately. The strictest interpretation is that anytime you're pushing anytime you're generating electricity and sending it back to the grid, they're requiring an interconnection agreement. So if you have this battery and you have this kind of smart hub there kind of monitoring things in order to prevent the backfeeding, then you can plug the system in and feel comfortable that you're not risking sending anything back to the grid and having utility raise any questions to you about that. So that's one of the bigger benefits and why we typically recommend this for individuals who don't have rooftop solar already. Once you have rooftop solar, you already have an agreement to send electricity back onto the grid. And one of the nicer things too about the system that we're selling, you can start with a smaller size system, and then you can add onto it too if you decide that you wanted to buy the upgrade for it. This is the little fancy video from the thing, which shows the electricity flowing. And you just get 3 seconds of it. That's it. There you go. It just goes. You can see the panels flowing from the panel to the hub, and then into the battery, and otherwise flowing into the house. So that's the manufacturer's video. All right. So backyard solar options. So you can see here, we've got here on the right, we've got the panels, there's a smart hub, the battery, the little inverter up there, and the CT monitor, which again helps prevent backfeeding. So these solar kits, one of the things that I think the most noteworthy is that they're designed to be true DIY for individuals who are not necessarily technically savvy. It is connect cable X to connector Y, plug it over here, open up the app, and start running. The part of the installation that you would need a professional for would potentially be an electrician, depending on whether or not you need a dedicated circuit set up for you to plug into outside your home. So that would be the extent of it needing a professional to be involved. But otherwise, it's such a DIY product that it really is accessible to a number of individuals. So if you buy one of the solar kits from us, it's an inverter, the smart hub, the batteries, the CT hub, all the cables that go with that, and mounting brackets that go with that. So that entire thing for 2 panels with 1 battery costs about $2,400, 4 panels and 2 battery, $3,900. So again, you could start with the 2 panels, 1 battery, and then upgrade to that 4 panels with a 2 battery system. this manufacturer who we're working with right now is Zenger. They have a very solid reputation for the quality of their systems, and we've really enjoyed working with them so far. So that's the backyard solar. That's the one with the battery. If you want a net metering expansion, essentially a net metering expansion is the same size panel. These 400-watt panels that you see over there, they're about the size of a door, about 7 feet, 4 feet. They're about 50 pounds each to carry. And then again, allows you to expand on your existing solar without installing more panels on the roof. Ensures you're still compliant with the limits of your existing interconnection agreement. I'll talk about that next slide here. But then it's really just a low cost approach that can be sized to meet your specific needs. So you can decide I need 2 panels. Now I need a 3rd panel. You just kind of add the panels and connect as you go, depending on the arrangement. So if you're an existing NEM 1.0 or NEM 2.0 customers, if you're not familiar with that, it's just when you got rooftop solar installed, if you got it kind of before 2 years ago, this is you, pretty much that for those agreements, those interconnection agreements, you're allowed to add up to 1 kilowatt of solar capacity to your existing array without changing any terms of the existing agreement. So if you had a 4 kilowatt system, you're allowed to send back up to 5. So if you buy the net metering expansion from us, the inverter that we provide generates a maximum of 900 watts. So you're safely under that 1 kilowatt. So you're always in compliance there. So talking here, let's apologize for the, the pricing on this is off. I apologize for that. The 2-panel system starts off at, now this is the memory game for me. Starts off at 1,400, I think that is, plus an additional additional like 450, I think it is, and then an additional 850 if you do 2 panels, 3 panels, and then 4 panels. So please ignore the prices there. I will all the pricing is on the website, and I'll get an updated version of this deck for that. That being said, you can start with 2 panels and then add the 3rd panel and then add a 4th panel, and it's a straightforward thing to do. The solar kit includes the inverter, the cables, and the mounting brackets. One thing I should mention, because this noteworthy otherwise to the group, we currently have our distribution hub based out of the Bay Area. So we have customers who are picking them up, and we're also doing some deliveries and installations within about a 50-mile radius of our warehouse here in Richmond, California. That being said, we are actively exploring an option for Southern California. I know that's of interest to a number of folks, including Dan and Zena. So it is in progress. That's the best I can say right now. We're definitely trying to get that set up as soon as possible. But at this time, we're unable to ship these in a cost-effective manner anywhere outside the Bay Area. So we have had folks who drove up from Southern California actually come pick up the panels, which was pretty amazing. But otherwise, we're working on a distribution point for Southern California. And then we're also looking at expanding beyond that, expanding beyond into other states and otherwise into other areas, just broadly across the country. So at this point, though, we're currently working just in out of the San Francisco Bay Area. Okay, I think that's it for now on my side of things. So I'm going to stop sharing here otherwise and see. Corey, did you want to add anything else?
No.
In that case, thank you both very much. And I think we'll dive into questions because I've already got like 20 questions off the top of my head, and I can see people entering questions in the chat as we go. So anyone who does have a question for Cora or Raj, please go ahead, type it in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can. And remember, there are no dumb questions, whether it's a basic question about how the system works or, a question about the big picture. We'll take them all. So I have a question about the legislation that limits it to 1200 watts. Is that per household or is it per plug? Like, can you have two plugged into one outlet and another, like four plugged in another outlet? Does that still fall under the limit?
In Utah, it's one per household. There are, as I mentioned, there is several different flavors of legislation out there that interpret that differently. But the precedent we now have in Utah is 1200 per household.
And is that, do you know if that's how the bill that Senator Wiener introduced last week was written? I think it is, but
I
I'm
think
not.
it is. Yeah,
Okay.
yes, I believe so. I saw a draft right before it was introduced, so I don't know if there were final tweaks.
Okay. Got it. Let's see. We're going to go dive into some questions from the chat. So how would an installation of this system affect homeowners insurance? Do you have any interaction with insurance companies? Like, do they cause any difficulty in this whole scheme?
I'll say that some states are concerned about that and they're putting that into their legislation. That's a bit of an unknown. They're in Germany, they don't have specific home insurance provisions for plug-in solar systems. It falls under a general homeowners insurance policy. But we're testing this as we speak, and it's a new technology. I would say if you're super concerned about that, maybe think about trying to propose an amendment through your connections, which I know you all have.
We'll add it to the list. Kathy Berlin is asking, is the owner of the plug-in panels responsible for any damage that might occur when returning power to the grid? You mentioned that utilities wanted to make sure that they don't bear responsibility, so they asked for that to be added to the Utah legislation, right? So if there is damage, first of all, what are the failure modes that might cause damage? And then who is responsible?
Raj, do you want to take that or you want me to field that one?
Why don't you start, and then I'm updating the slide here, so I got it right.
Who's responsible for that? I mean, so the utilities, in terms of their release from liability, yeah, they were mostly concerned about grid level dynamics, anything going wrong from a predictability standpoint. You're asking a different question, though. I think you're asking if an individual's plug and play system malfunctions and it has effect on a neighborhood circuit. Am I interpreting this correctly?
Maybe. Hypothetically, let's go with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no special law governing this, so I think it would fall under, I think it would be the customer's responsibility. The same way it would be the customer's responsibility if you plug in 4 space heaters to the same circuit, set your house on fire, and you might set your neighbor's house on fire too.
Raj, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, and
that's
that's part of the. I think that's part of the very conservative approach from the utilities, which is that anything that gets generated from their end, they just want liability protection, and I think everybody's concerned in that own right. So yeah, I think that when you are connected to the grid, whether or not you or generating anything you do in that home can technically affect your neighbors otherwise. So I think it falls under the broader umbrella that yes, if the equipment on your end causes damage, then you're potentially liable. So there's always going to be some protections that either side is trying to seek out, but practically speaking, it's that is a risk of the equipment itself.
But the amounts of electricity that can be fed back into the grid are so small from a panels set up like this that risk is probably minimal.
It's smaller than what rooftop solar is. So that being said, it's there's still always some inherent risk when you connect to the grid. There's always some inherent risk of what can go wrong that way. But generally, it's it is a smaller amount that you're sending back. So.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if this is a question about line worker safety, but that functionality is built into all the inverters. So in other words, if the inverter senses that there's a power outage, it'll instantly shut down within milliseconds. So if it's a question about customer liability toward line worker safety, that's not an issue with the technology, even as it exists today, which, by the way, it's immature. This is, I mean, the systems Raj is showing are state-of-the-art, cutting edge. They're at the very beginning. We're going to see more and more of this, more development, more technological solutions, if we open up the market by passing legislation in enough states.
Understood. And thank you for clarifying, because I have had someone ask me like whether it was dangerous, in a power outage.
It's
So,
not. There's automatic shutdown within milliseconds.
all right, that's good to know. Okay, even though it's not officially rooftop solar, could it be put on a roof?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. It has been, Brightsaver has put this on a couple of roofs. It's a real pain in the, you know what, to get it up there, but yeah, it could. It's a similar process. It's just a different mounting option.
Okay, and we also have a question from Anne asking, what direction do the panels have to face? If if you're on a small lot, if you have fences, like what would be optimal?
Sure. Well, Raj knows more about this than me, but there are apps that will calculate for you your optimal angle depending on your exact latitude. And then, of course, you just have to look at the actual site and is there a clear path between the sun and the panel? It depends, I would say, property to property, but it can, and actually one interesting thing that I would like to do in my own yard is get one of the lighter weight panels, which I can move seasonally, right? Because your optimal angle is, of course, going to be different in the winter than it will be in the summer. So that's something that will be, you can determine that once you get your panels where you should put them in the correct angle. Anything to add to that, Raj?
Yeah,
You,
I think the apps and various tools online exist otherwise to help you kind of figure out the optimal angle. So there's the pitch itself of the panels itself that you can which you'd want to change actually between summer and winter because of the angle that would get you the most amount of sun. But the second piece is the ideally, you're getting south or southwesterly facing sunlight. So if you can get direct southward sun or southwest, you're really going to get the most amount of sunlight that the peak numbers that you're looking for at any given panel is based on that. So plenty of folks don't have that or have partial shading, and that's totally fine. It's just that's what you're when you're looking at it and looking at your yard or the roof or other spots, that's what you're trying to optimize for.
And as you point out, Cora, if you have a yard where you've got trees that, shade it part of the time, you could potentially move a panel so that it got maximal sun at different months, depending where the shade fell. That's
yeah.
attractive to me, certainly.
Mhm.
Okay, we want to ask some questions about how the solar grid is actually working with the electricity that comes from the utility grid into your home. I think people have asked me about like how does your home know to use that electricity instead of pull electricity from the grid? Kind of how does that work? Is there a way you can explain it to people, kind of the interplay between the two grids?
Electricity is like water. So if you have electricity flowing into your house wiring, that's going to enter the circuits that you're running appliances off of first. And you're only going to draw from the grid if that energy runs out.
And I think that to add on to that, if you think about it, forget all of this talk of the plug-in solar that we just did today. If you have just a rooftop solar system, that rooftop solar system is designed to take the sunlight, convert it into electricity, and feed it into your home. And in that same way that you are in your home, if you have solar, you're taking from the panels, and then you are otherwise exporting off into the grid. That whole process of detecting of whether or not you need to pull excess on anything off the grid or send anything back, all of that today is exactly the same as what plug-in solar is doing. You're literally just introducing a new source of where that's coming from, and that's from this panel, which is plugged into the outlet. So if you can if you can grapple with what's happening in the rooftop solar world today, and you feel like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. It's literally the same thing. I just want to make sure people are aware that it's not some separate type of generation or otherwise distribution process in the home. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Understood. And so, given the current legislative world where you would have to install this sort of blocker at the panel to prevent backfeeding into the grid, what happens if there is excess energy generated by your panel?
Yeah, I mean, you theoretically, the utilities could care and notice. And, we are not aware of any occurrences of this, but that is the worst that could happen.
All right, some more questions here. Have you installed this on any rental properties yet, or only like homeowners?
Yes, we have installed it on several rental properties. I'm aware of 3, and Raj, you've probably done more in the last few months.
Yeah, I think you can add you can, let's say, double that at least. Yeah, the ones that I've been on. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think we've done I think we have over 100 and some odd total purchases and installations that have been performed already. And yeah, there's a number of them where they've purchased them from us, but we don't actually know if they're renters or homeowners. So I'm very likely to believe that number is much higher. We just don't have any specific data on that to share on that.
And given that you guys have only been going since last January, that's a nice number of installs.
And practically speaking, it was really only like last spring into the summer was when we actually started doing this. So it's been a hectic 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, warp speed.
You are, I presume, are importing these panels from a manufacturer in China?
Yeah, so there are the panels we're sourcing from different companies. And the panels themselves are coming from Taiwan. They're coming from some are coming from Europe. These days with the tariffs especially too, we're just doing our best to get the panels from one is getting the panels in the first place, and then 2 is actually trying to get ones that we from manufacturers who we will want to get them from. So it's but a good number of them coming from China and Taiwan, as far as I know.
Okay. Yeah, I think that people were wondering if you guys have been hit by tariff woes like everyone else.
It's been fun. And when I say fun, it hasn't been fun.
And by fun, we mean not fun at all.
Not fun at all. Absolutely.
All right. Can you talk just a bit about the benefits and the cost, and how much like a 2-panel system really gets you in terms of, a reduction in your bill versus how much you are paying up front?
Sure. Well, the data that we have, where we have the most information, is from Germany, and there you see about a 15 to 20% offset for your average apartment dweller, if it's oriented correctly, not obstructed. We have some estimates that would be higher here in California. We get more sun. We're at a different latitude, but in terms of specific numbers, I'd say we're gathering that data as we speak. So we expect that, it obviously depends on the size of your dwelling and how much you're consuming, your utilization rate, but we expect it would be in the ballpark of 15 to 20%.
Cor, do you want me to, I can bring up the
Oh, yeah.
the table from the website.
Yeah,
So let me just
please
share
do.
this real quick. So any luck? Maybe I can click things. What do you know? Okay. So I'll make this a little bigger if it allows me to. Or do you know? Okay, great. So so this is from the net metering expansion page. So we've done some calculations here, which can give you a sense of the of payback. Now, there are a few caveats here as we look at the as we look at numbers. One, this is talking about where this is assuming that you are placing the panel in some optimal conditions or otherwise getting like direct sunlight, getting some good southwestern facing sun. Two is there's an estimated value of 30 cents per kilowatt hour under California net metering rates. That again will vary depending, and again Southern California might have some different rates that you'd want to plug into it. So if you have a 2-panel system, then again total cost, and that cost there assumes that you did the delivery and installation from us, so that's why it's higher than the what's on the website there. Annual production, again 1,200 kilowatt hours, and an annual value of 360 and a payback of about 5.5 years. Again, rates are higher, that payback period is going to be sooner, right? So it just depends on a number of factors there. I did want to show this because I did actually finally correct this. So this was the current prices for the 2 panels, the 3 panels, and the 4 panels, which are covered inverter cables and the mounting brackets. But anyway, to that point, that's why those costs there plus the installation fee. So this gives you a true ballpark for that, and this is is one of the questions that anybody who's purchasing the system should care about, which is that payback period, as much as it's one of the questions that's really hard to answer. And we do our best to try and give people guidance as to what we think it is, and it's with any luck, the prices will continue to decrease at a steady rate, such that these payback periods will be these will just be conservative numbers, and you'll see hopefully some better numbers than that.
I will just jump in here and say that I ran numbers for LA users, meaning using sunlight hours that we get here in the Valley. And because we have our own utility, LADWP, with its own tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 electricity costs, I ran with those. And I came up with a 2-panel system producing $390 per year if it's all tier 1 energy. But if your household is, using tier 2 and it's knocking off some of your tier 2 energy, it goes up to $485. So it's actually a shorter payback period than what you have on your website there for our local numbers. I had to nerd out on that. So
super helpful. No, appreciate that.
Yeah.
So it's good to get the data.
And our
for
rates
the
are going up.
locals. And Katie's asking if the battery storage is enough to charge an electric car. Like, what does that amount of energy mean in practical sense?
Yeah, yeah. So, not a car. So you're talking about the 2 kilowatt hours for the single battery, 4 kilowatt hours for the other batteries. That's like you're talking about appliances and cutting into usage for those appliances. Where again I struggle with this, and I apologize, is that part of this is depends. Some appliances that you're purchasing are super energy inefficient, and some are very energy intensive in the usage. So the best way that again that I've seen for people to try and grok what this is that table that we have, which just gives you a sense of kind of rough numbers of what you're going to offset. That being said, one of the things that we actually do on our end of things, to be fully transparent, is we actually have individuals give us their electricity bill, and we do a little ChatGPT AI calculations, and it gives us some idea of savings, what that could be. So I can we need to do a better job of kind of translating that into real world equivalents. Like, does that mean it's like is that running a dryer for 3 hours? Does it mean um, uh, does it mean running the furnace or running the electric heater in the home, etc.? So we'll do some better job. We'll do a better job of getting some numbers up on the website, but it's um, I don't have a better answer than it depends or this at this time. So it's really meant for offsetting like X hours of an appliance on a given day. I think that's probably a better way of
Yes. I mean, one thing to think
quantifying.
about is, we've all seen what a full house solar panel array looks like, right? How many panels you've got on the roof. People will have, 20 panels on the
Right.
roof. And that's the sort of system that can power your entire house more or less all the time. What we're talking about here is, 2 panels, 3 panels, 4 panels. That's going to power a portion of your house. It means you're
Right.
not ever going to overproduce, which you don't really want for this. I'm so sorry, my cat just fell into a box. You don't want to be overproducing with this kind of system because you're not getting paid for sending power back to the grid the way you are with a large rooftop solar system. So you basically want to consume all of the energy that it's producing all of the time. So it's producing a portion of what your house is using each day. Okay, Judy, did you want to ask a question yourself? I see you have your hand raised. So if you have a question to ask, you can unmute and let me know. Um, Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and ask one last thing, which is about the legislation. We've got people saying, what do we think are the odds of it passing this year? How can we help get it passed? What's
Yeah.
the outlook on this?
Yeah, in California specifically. Um, to tell you the truth, we were not going to even go for California, even though we're all based here. And we, of course, love California because we believe that this will be a harder fight here. So that is to say, we need you. We need all organizations like yours to help us fight back the opposition. And to tell you the truth, at this moment, we have some guesses as to who the opposition will be, but at the moment we're trying to make friends with everyone. We're open arms. We're not trying to. I was talking to the New York Times today, and she really wanted me to say who we were going to go head to head with, and I'm not going to say that at this point because we hope we don't go head to head with anyone. I mean, in Utah, the utilities, for instance, were not that concerned about this. They saw this as sort of a de minimis amount of electricity that wasn't going to affect their bottom line, wasn't going to affect stability. What can you do? I think that one of the best things you can do at this stage is keep abreast of what's happening. We're going to need people to show up at hearings, and we're going to need people to call legislators. I would watch carefully for who within the legislature is opposed to this, and really try to target them if you live in their district or if you know someone who does. All those things you know how to do so well, and this is your wheelhouse. I mean, these are the things this is a people-powered movement. We do not have a single lobbyist on our staff. We're a nonprofit, a 501c3 under a fiscal sponsor. I mean, really, this is a grassroots movement, and it's all about telling the story. It's all about talking about how this is a no-brainer solution that will really impact people's lives, and the climate movement at large, we believe. So it's all your traditional stuff. And I will say, we have a close relationship with Climate Action Now, the app. And, I'm trying to think, at least 2 state legislators who I've spoken to, possibly more, found out about plug-in solar from an email through the Climate Action Now app. Another handful found out about it from just constituents who cared about this. I mean, New York is literally happening because of some retiree activists who are lovely, who for Third Act, they made noise. They contacted their representatives. So really, truly, I mean, this is the kind of thing that all hands on deck. We need you. We need your friends. We need everyone you know who can help us organize and be a voice for the people who can benefit from this, not the entrenched interests that are worried about losing profit.
Well, we are at your disposal. Our chapter and the California coalition of other climate reality chapters around the state. I know the chair of the LA chapter is also on this call tonight, as well as some members from other chapters. And, you know, we want to make this happen.
Yeah.
So keep us in the loop. Call on us when you need us. We can, you know, muster a group of people to make calls on a particular day to show up at a particular hearing. Like that's what we're here to do. And we'd really love to see this happen.
And I will say, you know, do get on our email list because that's how you'll find out what to do when. So, so if you go to brightsaver.org, you can sign up for our newsletter. We'll be sending out one soon, but that is how we're going to communicate what we need when.
Absolutely. So anyone who kind of wants to stay abreast of developments, go ahead and sign up for the Bright Saver newsletter, and you can put your name in the chat for our legislative group so that you get our action alerts on this. And let's see if we can't get a win this year in California, huh?
Honestly, if we get California, game over, which is to say game begun. I mean, we are such a huge market that just by ourselves, we are going to transform the landscape, and we're going to make plug-in solar manufacturers come into this country seriously. And pretty soon, that's going to make prices drop to German levels and adoption rates to surge as well.
And honestly, this really is one that everyone should be able to get behind. Doesn't matter your politics, you know, doesn't matter your perspective. This is something we can all benefit from together. So
Yeah,
let's make
hear,
it
hear.
happen. I have kept you 2 minutes past the allotted time. So at this point, I want to do the fun part of the meeting where we unmute and thank our speakers and give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
good.
so much for speaking to us tonight.
Thank you.
So good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the time, everybody.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your being here tonight. It was great.
We appreciate you. Thank you for all the hard work you do.
So much good information.
Right.
We'll be in touch. Thank you again.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.